I think that most sawyers and mill operators would agree that most of the dull blading that happens in the bark of the tree, sometimes from dragging the tree around, getting some mud and dirt into it, small rocks. Unless you're hitting a nail or some sort of metal, that probably is the most frequent cause of dull blading. Blades go dull after normal use too, but the bark seems to add to it. So when it comes time to, or getting close to time to change a blade because of blade dulling, it's a good idea to go ahead and use up your blade cutting out your cant. That way you're through the bark, you put on a nice sharp blade, and you get good straight cuts. So this one's starting to get on the dull side. I finished up cutting the cant, got rid of the slabs, and I'm ready to go on cutting some lumber. So I'll go ahead and we'll sharpen this blade. Before we actually get to sharpening, let's talk a little bit first about what it takes to sharpen a blade. To start with, as you probably know, I am using a Woodmizer sawmill, so I purchased the Woodmizer BMS 25 blade sharpener, which is their least expensive sharpener. It has gone up considerably in price in the past year or so, but it's really a worthwhile investment. Let's get a blade loaded. Loading a blade is a fairly simple matter, and so far as making it easy to know where we stop and start, look for the weld on the blade, and we'll start right there. With this Woodmizer BMS 25, we have rollers, 3 rollers. The one on the far side of me, the blade stays to the inside, and then the 2 on the side here both stay to the outside. It's a matter of raising up the little pusher and then pulling out on the clamp and dropping it all the way down tight into place. And again, starting about where the weld is. I don't know how well it can be seen, but there are 2 critical areas that we want to concentrate on in sharpening the blade. One is the face of the tooth, and the other is the gullet of the tooth. And we have 2 adjustments on this Woodmizer. We have a wing nut adjustment here for the push bar that will push it around and stop it at just the proper place. If we have that adjusted too far that way, when the blade comes down, it would completely miss the tooth. If we're too far back with it and don't push it far enough, we have the opposite problem, that when the blade comes down, it'll take too much of the tooth. The next adjustment then would be the depth of the cut. That adjustment is done right here by turning this turnbuckle and using that lock nut to lock it. Now, what we are doing with the first adjustment is to adjust the face of the cut. The second adjustment then comes to clean out the gullet. And really, the most important part on that gullet cut would be near the top of the tooth. We want to sharpen both the face of the tooth and the top of the tooth. And again, the depth adjustment is this one right here. Move things a little bit. And then in just a second here, I'll go ahead and move back to the start of the cut, and then we'll fire up the grinding wheel. The grinding wheel is something that needs to be shaped basically to the shape to where you have a rounded bottom in the gullet, and you come up to the top of the teeth, or come up to the top of the teeth. Okay, here we go again. And that is adjusted about as it should be, to where we're just taking a little bit off of the cutting face and a little bit off of the top of the gullet, enough to clean things out. Now it only takes about 3 or 4 minutes to go all the way around this blade, and it's automatically being fed. One thing that I have noticed is that on the back side of the blade after sharpening will be a slight burr. And that burr can easily be taken off. We'll show you how to do that or what I do as my next process. Let's let this finish sharpening. And from a slightly different angle. This may be a little blurry this close, but on this tooth here and on a number of them, you can see where I'm not getting sharpened quite all the way to the tip on the gullet. So I'm going to adjust my blade depth or my grinder depth just a little bit down, and we'll go through it one more time. And now you can see that we are getting sharpened all the way to the tip of the blade on the gullet, and the face is being sharpened equally well. Oh yeah, and we have to have a dog nearby to inspect our work. The next step in the process then is to get rid of this burr that is on the back side of where it was sharpened. It's not a big deal, but we want both sides of the blade to have an even smoothness so that we get a nice straight cut through the work that we're doing. So let's get going, and we'll take out that burr on the back side of that. And I do that simply with a power wire brush. And now with the blade cleaned off and deburred, the last step is to set the teeth, which is to give each individual tooth a bit of a bend so that we cut a wider kerf than what the blade is. So the blade isn't getting hung up. It helps to get rid of larger particles of sawdust that way, and really make for a nice sharp blade and an easy push through a cut. Now Woodmizer and several other manufacturers actually make a blade setting tool, some of them have gauges on them that you can see how many thousandths you're actually moving the blade and that sort of thing. For me, I just made a homemade deal here that I clamp the blade in. I have these bolts set to the proper depth. To both of them are giving me, I don't even remember what I had them set at, but it's a slightly wider kerf than the what Woodmizer's brand new blades do. But essentially, I put the blade in there, I tighten it up, move it 3 teeth, retighten the vise, loosen it, move 3 teeth, retighten the vise, and what that does is it gives an even bend on both of these bolts. Now, to make sure that I have something that is symmetrical when I'm completely done, is I turn the blade around and do it from the other side too. I use 132-inch blades, which has, I think, 150 teeth on it. So it takes 50 moves in each direction in order to get it. But what I've noticed is that it makes actually for a better and an easier cut than what the Woodmizer ones do when they are brand new. It's kind of one of those things that do it to your own taste. The wider the kerf, the harder you may have to push because you're taking out more sawdust essentially with each cut. It can be very slight, but that adjustment you will notice by doing that either I've taken too much or too little, and that can be adjusted simply by moving these two screws maybe 1/10 of a turn. Let's load that blade. Now if we take a closer look, we can see that one tooth is bent in one direction. The next tooth will not be bent, it'll be straight on to clean out the cut, and then the next tooth is bent in this direction. And it might be a little easier to see. If I get too close, I'm afraid it won't focus. So the trick is to set the teeth on these two, move over 3 spaces, and then set the teeth on the next two, move over 3 spaces, set the teeth on the next two. Let's try doing that. A couple of tips. One is pretty obvious. Anytime you're handling a sharp blade, you want to be wearing gloves or something to protect your hands. My daughter is always bandaging me up from cuts that I've got when I forget to do that or just choose not to. A second tip is when we were back doing the grinding, you saw the sparks being shot off of the grindstone. All those sparks are little tiny pieces of metal, small pieces of iron that will rust. If you're doing that work on a concrete slab or on a wooden deck or something, if you leave those there, the grinding particles on the deck, even though you may not see them, as soon as it rains or as soon as you water your lawn or whatever, they will turn to rust and they're nearly impossible to remove. So always clean up your mess afterwards. Okay, let's start setting. Move 3 teeth. Set. Move 3 teeth. Set. Move 3 teeth. Set. Now, if you don't feel like making something like this, there is someone on eBay that actually sells these for around 50 bucks, which is far, far cheaper than buying the setting tools that the blade manufacturers make. And to me, it certainly does an acceptable job. I don't know that it's better or worse, but a lot less expensive. For me, I made this out of scraps of iron that I had around, so it didn't cost me a dime. It just took a little bit of time. And always making sure that it is the full depth in the vise, so your teeth are always being sharpened the exact same amount. Once you get the hang of it, it actually goes pretty quickly. A little over halfway around. Okay, that is all the way around on that side. Now what I'll do is I'll flip everything over and do it again on the other side. I'm in a little less comfortable position because I have to be inside the blade in order to do this one. But it all seems to work. Here we go again from the other side, and again they are probably very nearly set now. I'm not good enough, even with a micrometer, to adjust these bolts good enough that I can be assured of getting an even set on both sides of the blade. But by doing it twice, once from that side, once from this side, you can rest assured that everything is symmetrical. Here we go. That's really all there is to it. We have a sharpened blade, sharpened and set. Setting really only needs to be done about every second or third sharpening. And the exception to that might be if you hit a piece of metal or a rock or something in one of your cuts. It may bend or break off a tooth to where it would need to be set the next time too. But as a rule, 2 to 3 sharpenings, I'll reset the blade. And I'll get maybe 3 to 5 sharpenings off of a new blade. Maybe not quite that much if I hit something. If I hit something, I could destroy the blade on the first try. I've done that before too, hitting nails and bolts. I hope this was somewhat informative to you. I appreciate you joining me for this episode. I'll plan on seeing you on the next one. Thumbs up, please, and subscribe if you haven't already, and please tell a friend.